Joe, thank you.
So, first question, is vinyl still your preferred format to play?
Vinyl is still my preferred format to play just because it's so tactile and engaging and fun. You know, I'm ashamed to say, don't even have record box yet. I'm like always the last person, you know, on the whole kind of digital journey, whether it's social media or digital files. I mean, I do play digital, and sometimes might be some situations where it can be a better situation. But I prefer vinyl because, you know, I have a visual memory as well. And so I can find records more easily.
When you talk about vinyl, you light up.
Yeah, I mean, I've been collecting records for, well, I'm 55 next week, so for 40 years, like solidly collecting. I'm not just saying. I'm talking about actual going to record shops, buying a lot of records from the age of 15. So it's just something that I've always done and had joy out of, and it's just, I think.
Moving house for the records you keep buying?
I've had to move house a few times, but yeah, I have to cull my collection quite a bit, which I think is okay, because to me it's not about size.
It's about quality, yeah?
It's about quality, right? So I want to make sure that all those records that I have in my collection are there for a reason, whether I like the record or I have a great memory attached to it.
So was there a defining point in your life where you realised being a DJ selector could be a career?
You know, when I was younger, I thought I would be a radio DJ anyway, so I was always into the whole radio host thing. I started hosting radio shows when I was 14 years old. There were a few women on the radio in the 1970s when I started listening, so that was there was an option there to do that. And then I studied radio, and I became the first program director at WNYU, which is the biggest college radio station in the country, one of the most important college radio stations in the country at that time. So radio was kind of my path, and radio is really how I got into club DJing. I didn't even know there was a job where you could be a DJ in a club. I mean, I had been to some clubs, but it never really occurred to me that much. I was working in record shops, hosting radio shows, so it was really through that I got into the whole club DJ thing.
Why do you think it didn't occur to you that was a job?
I mean, I grew up in Massachusetts. I mean, I didn't grow up in New York City, so. I mean, I wasn't like out at the Paradise Garage, you know, at the age of 13, you know. I lived in Massachusetts in a small New England town. The only DJs, let me just put it this way. When I told my family that I was DJing professionally, they thought I was a wedding DJ, because that's the only kind of DJ that they know of. And they still don't understand what I do. They really don't. They really have no idea, except for a few that have come to my gigs.
You know, growing up, so who was your inspiration, your role model? So where you thought that's
my favorite radio show growing up was called Nocturnal Emissions, and it was hosted by a guy named Oedipus, who was the program director of WBCN, which was a really cool AOR radio station in Boston. And he had this very edgy show. It's the first place I heard Brian Eno, all these artists I had never been exposed to that weren't on classic rock stations, that weren't on top 40 stations. And I ended up working with him years later. I ended up producing and writing a radio show that went out to 50 commercial stations that he was my host. So I ended up working with him like a decade and a half later.
So what took you from the radio to actually playing to live sets, being a DJ? Was there someone in your life that you were inspired by?
Yes, well, so I was on the radio, and then I started going to David Mancuso's loft parties, and I started to hear this whole other kind of music I hadn't really been exposed to on a deep level. I had been out to loads of clubs and stuff, but it was never anything that inspired me to dance, but not to collect. And that's a very big difference. I mean, I was running up to friends saying, what is this record? What is this record? What is this record? I need to have this. I need to find out more about this music. I must play this music. And then I started a radio show that reflected that. It was called Soul School, and it was like a combination of loft classics, Paradise Garage classics, some house as well. It was about 1991, 92. And it was from there that I started getting gigs. The first place I was asked to play were by listeners, and I was invited to play the African Street Festival in Brooklyn in 1992, you know, and as the white girl shows up, you know, and that was my first gig outside the radio station. That was a proper one. I mean, there was other ones that I had played with, you know, as part of WNYU. You know, when I was in the 80s, I played at Mars and a few other places, CBGB's Record Canteen, but it wasn't the same kind of a thing. It was more indie. It wasn't the same kind of club DJ